Hey, painting friends. So glad you guys are here joining me today. Today I am going to be painting a little duck from the duck pond at one of my favorite parks here locally. I absolutely love painting things that are white. I love infusing a whole bunch of vibrant color into it, so that's what I'm going to be doing today. And if you're here joining, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from. Tell me whether you're an artist or just an art lover wanting to learn maybe. Just really appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you send me a like for a wave. And I did want to tell you about a couple of things really quick before I jump in and get started. And that is I've got some live workshops coming up. I'm so excited to be going live again, in-person workshops. I've got one locally here in Texas, North Texas, North Richland Hills, and it's just a little over half full, so I've got a few seats left there. And the other one I'm so excited about coming up in October is a retreat in Italy. So it is the Escape to Tuscany retreat. So just be sure and go and check those out on my website, chrisbranley.com. And would love for you to join us if you can. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get this switched around here so you guys can see the painting up close. Flip that around. Takes a little maneuvering here, making sure we get everything all set up in the right place so you guys can see. Make sure we don't have any glares. So, what I have done here is I went ahead and put in my underpainting, and I like to have a bunch of colors supporting those final layers of paint. So I've got lots of fun, vibrant colors underneath, and that's kind of how I get the vibrant, illuminated effect on those whites especially, because you don't want to just paint something white and bland. It's just fun to kind of bump it up. So I'm going to show you the process of layering over these kind of stained glass looking colors to still have a white duck, but a much more interesting, fun white duck. So I am going to start off using a number 14 Royal Sable Tech. So this is a bright. And I'm gonna kind of work with my mid-tones first. So again, if you are joining in, go ahead and introduce yourself and let me know where you're from. All right, I'm just kind of getting my other, there we go. Had to turn the volume down. There's kind of a delay from what you're seeing and what I'm actually doing. And you could actually hear that in my other iPad here. It's easier for me to see looking on my iPad to get your comments. So, now we can get started. All right. Hey guys, Cindy, love the underpainting. This will be fun to see it come to life. I hope so. Let's get in here. So we're gonna start with kind of those mid-tones first. I'm gonna go right into the duck here, and I don't wanna go right in with my brightest whites. So I'm gonna kind of tone down and get kind of a grayish blue first. And just start off with some of those mid-tones. Get some of those kind of mid-shadows laid in. So we just got back. My husband and I celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. And it was so nice to actually be able to go somewhere. We went to Orange Beach, Alabama. And really had a nice time. We were a little concerned at first because they just had a tropical storm come through the day before we arrived. So it turned out at the beach to really be nice weather. So a few of the days were a little bit overcast, but that kind of helped to keep the heat down. So I couldn't complain about that. But we had a good time, and the food was phenomenal. Almost every restaurant that we ate at just had some amazing seafood. So of course, I ended up getting shrimp pretty much every night, just a different kind. All right, let's see here. Let's move up to the face. I don't want to get too much of this in because I want to pop in some pretty, these intense blues in here. Just looking to see kind of where the mid-tones are first, and then we'll put in some of the darks in the highlights. So just finding places where I can throw this color in to kind of have a little bit of a consistency and unify things. All right, let's jump into another value. Also, guys, thank you so much, those of you who've been sharing these videos. I really, really appreciate that. So if you are so inclined, I would really appreciate just hitting the share button, getting this out to people that might be interested, other artists or people who just like to watch painting. And it helps me too. So I'm very grateful. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Let's go into, I'm gonna jump in here to the oranges. Let's just pop that color right on out. So I'm gonna start with some of the darker oranges first. Just kind of mixing up an orange and a magenta. Gives me a nice dark value. Going right over this dark value here, and it's actually allowing me to kind of blend into that undertone a little bit because I'm working with oils, and oils stay wet for quite a long time. So it's nice to be able to come in and work wet into wet. It's my favorite way to do it. So if any of you guys have the chance to go anywhere yet now that things are starting to open up, do tell. All right, going with some lighter, brighter oranges. And there's actually a little bit of a green tone to his beak. So I'm just trying to kind of find those little nuances, those little subtle hints of color. So I'm getting kind of the neutral oranges in so that I can pop in those really bright oranges here in just a minute. And that'll help those really stand out. If everything is all bright and vibrant, then it's not really, those vibrant colors won't sing as well. So you've got to have the neutrals in order for the vibrancy to happen. And then down here, of course, his little foot is underwater. So that is going to be toned down a little bit as well. I'm going to go a little bit darker than the beak there, adding a little bit more of the green to the orange. And again, this is a little darker for now, but I'm going to come in and pop in some more vibrant colors on top of that. And we can also see little bits of his other little foot up under here, so we're going to put hints of that in. And if you hear Tibby barking, Just, you know, a reminder, this is a live video, so anything can happen and anything can go wrong. You just never know what's going to happen. Let's see here. All right, I'm kind of excited to get into these blues, so let's do that. Don't be shy, jump in and say hi if you are joining in. Just mixing up a really pretty blue to go on top of those purples. So again, I'm going to start a little darker, and then I'll build up some of those lighter values on top. So we've got 2 layers of feathers here. He's got this bunch of feathers in front that are kind of poofing up, and then he's got his little tail feathers there in the back. Welcome, those of you that are just joining in. Great to see you here. So if you're just joining, what I was saying earlier was I've already put my underpainting, and now what I'm doing is I'm building colors on top. So I just kind of scribble in some vibrant colors underneath, and then that gives me a foundation to build all those other colors on. Hey Kathy, thank you. She says, oh beautiful, I appreciate that. So we've got a little ways to go, but just gonna take a little bit of color at a time, one stroke at a time, right? All right, I'm gonna go a little warmer with my blue now. It's fun to play temperatures against each other. So even though generally speaking, your cool colors are your blues, your violets, and your purple, or your blues, your violets, and your green, sorry. But within those cool colors, the blues can lean warmer or cooler. So these are cooler blues. You can see the kind of purple tone. And now I'm coming in with a little bit warmer blue. It has a little more green in it, so it goes a little warmer. And it's just fun to kind of play those off of each other. So just kind of finding my way through, going back and forth and throughout the painting, so I'm not just stuck in one little area. Changing up my color tones and my values and my temperatures. So white is not just white, as you can see. White is a great reflector of color. Hey Jan, so my panel today is an 8x8. So I'm leaving room to have a little bit of a highlight because he's kind of backlit a little bit. So I don't want to lose that. Just looking for other places where some of those lighter shadows are. Hey Donnie, it's good to see you here. Thanks for joining. All right, gonna go back to some of those cooler blues. just kind of work back and forth until I finally just start building everything up. Hi, Andrea. Is your underpainting dry before starting the next layer? No, it's actually wet. I work on it pretty much in the same sitting. I did this a little bit earlier today, but it's still wet because it's oils. So this is a process called Alla Prima, working wet into wet. And I can use that to my advantage by the way I put the strokes onto the surface. So if I'm just laying them, for example, if I come in and I turn my brush to a more parallel angle to the surface, it's going to offload more paint so it doesn't stir up the colors underneath. If I come in more vertical, straight on, it's going to stir those colors up underneath and kind of blend in. So you can see that one went a little bit more purple than that because it blended in with those colors underneath. All right, I'm going to put in some of the lighter whites, but not the brightest. Let's see. I'm not going to go with a pure white. I'm going to go with a little bit warmer white. So we'll start with that. So up in front through here, this is much warmer whites than what we have back here. Just going to start kind of working these in slowly. Just putting in a few strokes, and then I'll clean the brush and reload. And that kind of helps to keep your paints nice and vibrant. If you just keep working with the same stroke over and over again, your colors are going to start to muddy up. Also, I'm wanting to leave a little bit of room to add in. You can see there's a little bit of texture, and then there's reflection of light bouncing in off the water. So I don't want this to just be solid. Let's see, I'm gonna go a little darker, still using my warm white. And you can see I kind of put a warm color underneath there because I want this white to stay fairly warm through here. And I can kind of take those blues and pull them in to tone that down a little bit. So I've got kind of an orangey color going into the white, and now what I'm doing is pulling in a little blue, and what that's doing is it's going to gray that down because those are complements. So I'm just looking for little areas. There's a little bit of shadowing going on here. I can kind of break that big yellow area up, which is going to be lots of white. I just don't want all of it to be really, really bright white. Coming in with some more blue, cooling it down, darkening it. So I'm putting some blue on there, but I am wanting that to be a little warmer. So I'm just going to come back and warm that color up slightly. So I'm going to remix. Still going with a darker white, but this time it's going to be warmer. More of an orangey brown. Coming in right over the top of this. Nope, needs to go darker. Sometimes you mix your colors up on your palette, But since you don't have the same exact color surrounding that color that you have on your surface, sometimes it's hard to get the right color right away, which is fine because you just you put a little mark down, don't commit to it too soon, and then if it's not quite right, just go back and remix. So it kind of helps to gauge it by putting those strokes up there. So I knew that was way too light, so I knew I needed to mix a much darker value before taking it back up again. And I'm going to come in with some orange and just kind of pull in some reflective color in there. Okay, I think I'm going to pop up the colors of the beak here. So we're going to go with some nice bright oranges. Making sure I don't cover up where the shadows are. And I'm going to take that darker orange that I had mixed earlier all the way down. This came out a little too far. Now I'm going to pop a nice highlight on there. Usually I save all the highlights until the end, but since we're limited on time, I'm going to go ahead and kind of bring up some of those highlights just so you can see how things kind of start to come to life once you start popping in those really bright highlights. Hey, Jessica, isn't he cute? She says, what a cute ducky. There's a whole little family of them just hanging out together. As a matter of fact, I have a picture of 3 of them sitting in a row, so I'm definitely going to do that painting with all the ducks in a row. All right, let's take some of those same oranges, and again, I'm going to do his feet down here, but they're underwater, so the color is distorted slightly. I'm going to put a little green in there, but I'm going brighter. Nope, need to go a little brighter. Got to be able to see it. Jessica says, I love the beach. We are going to Port Aransas in November. I love seafood too. It would be fun to paint a blue crab. Ooh, yeah. They're so colorful and fun. All right, so I want to kind of get the webbed look there. So I want to go a little darker, but not too bright. So I'm going with a Cad Red Light, which is a really bright looking orange, dark orange. But I'm going to tone it down a little bit. And I'm going to add a complement, well, a near complement. The complement would be blue, but I'm putting in a little green and a little magenta. And we're going to come right in here in the webbed area of the feet, kind of pull that color together. It gets darker over here. Adding a little purple. Purple's always a good color when you want to go dark. Okay, and then we're going to kind of smudge over the top of that when we start putting the water in. Just going to put little hints. We can't really see what's going on with this foot here, so we're just going to fake it. Put little blobs of color there. All right, let's go ahead and put in some of the highlights on the rest of the duck. Want to get some of those really pretty brights in. Again, these highlights are really what's going to start making him come to life. Let's see, there's a few little strays that kind of come out. I'm going to let those kind of blend into those blues a little bit because I don't want them quite as bright. As a matter of fact, I'm going to wipe the paint out of the brush. Have a nice dry brush here, and I'm going to come back in and kind of soften some of that. Pulling those blues and whites into each other. Okay, let's come back here and put some of these highlights in. And I'm still not necessarily putting my brightest color in yet. Some of these, it helps to go back and put just a straight white on top. This is a warmer white. And then back in here, we've got whites that actually turn a little cooler. So I'm going to go back to some of those cooler whites. So what I'm doing is I'm adding in some of my cool colors into my white. So I've got different greens added into the whites, or turquoise or blue. And that helps to keep it white, but cool it down. Because you can still have highlights that are not warm. You can have cool highlights. And he's got some really pretty little fluffy things going on there. So I'll be able to accentuate that once I start putting in the water. Looking for other places I can put in whites that are cool. So right over here on his little cheek, it's backlit, but it's not a warm white. And then this back in here is still, even though it's really bright and backlit, it's still kind of cool. So notice that I'm just laying my strokes in. I'm not blending at this point. Towards the end, I'll go back and refine and pull some of those edges together a little bit. But if you spend too much time blending in one spot from the beginning, you might have a tendency to over blend. And you don't really want to do that. If you're wanting it to look impressionistic and you want to be able to see those juicy strokes, you don't want to overblend. Just changing the tone of my white again. So as this curves around, over here it starts to get darker, so I don't want to put too many strokes in there with this lighter highlight. Because if you put a light on there, it's harder to come back in and darken. So as you can see on my undertones, I've really established those darker values. So that helps me to be able to build those lighter values on top and have that depth and contrast that's needed. Going back to some warm whites again. So I'm not going as warm. I'm actually taking my warm and pulling in a little my cool right in through here. Almost a mixture of both. And let's go ahead and get some of this darker value in. So it's almost a kind of a dirty gray, blue gray. It may be too dark, but let's just drop this in and see. Yeah, I think that's going to be fine. So I've got a gray there, and if I wanted to put a pop of color, I could take a more blue tone and just kind of pop that in. You see how much that stands out on top of that gray? Those grays are very helpful. So they may be boring, but they definitely can help liven up your painting, liven up your colors. All right, so I like that blue there, but I want to put a warmer blue on top and go a little lighter. Not necessarily covering all of it. Okay, we got lots of patchiness going on here, so let's start tying that together a little bit. So I'm needing some whites that are not quite as bright as what we have, but not quite as dark. So we're going with kind of a mid-tone. Just going back and forth. Not covering everything up. It's nice to have those little pops of that vibrant color in there. That needed to go darker. Looking for a lighter white again. Kind of start to define around the eye. And I'm going to start pulling those darks and lights together. Pop in a nice little highlight. All right, it's gonna help if I start working on my background, because then I can start pulling in edges together and softening things, and then we'll come back and finish up what's going on the duck. So we've got about 25 minutes. Gosh, the time just goes so fast when I'm doing these lives. All right, I'm gonna start with some of this kind of violet blue color down here, blue-gray. This is really pretty. Making sure I mix my colors really thoroughly on my palette. Taking the time to do that. I think I need to go a little more blue. let's see, we've got some more intense blues. So not quite as neutral. And what that's doing is reflecting the sky. We're seeing little patches of sky back in here, right in through here. And I'm not doing exactly what I'm seeing in my reference photo. I'm just using the photo as it is, a reference, and not too tied to having to make it look exactly like the photograph. It's harder to be intuitive and creative if you're so glued to getting every exact color and exact positioning. Now, sometimes obviously it's necessary, you know, like with architecture, obviously you don't want your building to look like it's about to fall over, or portraits of faces, you want to capture the likeness and all of that. But when it comes to, especially things in nature, it's so fun to be able to just use that photo as a reference and kind of just let your creativity flow. If y'all have any questions also, just feel free to jump on in. So I think what I'm gonna do here is go ahead and put in some of the body. That's down here in the water. So we're gonna get some of those colors in. I think we need to lighten it and go a little more green. So it's a little tricky because you're seeing parts of the color of the water, and it's also darker, but it's reflecting what's going on above it. So kind of wanting to capture that. Okay, so where else can we put this same color? We can plop it in right up next to the feet here, where it's a little darker. Kind of coming over the foot a little, just kind of drag that in, let that blend a bit. And I'm going to take kind of a gray, blue, green, going a little lighter. Still letting some of those greens underneath pop. And we're going to take some of this color and kind of pull it right over the foot. Let it look like that water is just floating right over them. So I'm going a little lighter. I'm going to add in some highlights. Right in here, you can see some of the coloring of the duck. And then I'm going to come back with some of these colors and just start pulling some of those over the top. Just let it look like little ripples where the color is just flowing on the surface. You don't want to overdo this. Less is more, so it's better to stop sooner than you think you need to. So you can always come back in and add more strokes. Let's see, I'm out of my blue. Let me refill that here real quick. Okay, so I'm wanting to take more of this blue and kind of pull it down into the other color we just placed, help that kind of blend together. So we've got more darks on this side, but we do have a few little dark areas in here. So I'm just gonna put little indications of where those ripples are. That's gonna kind of help balance out our composition a little bit too. Hey, and while I've got those blues, I'm gonna take some of that blue, go a little more purple. Lighten it up a little bit, and I'm gonna create a shadow right up underneath the beak. Let's see, let's do a little right here. Okay, looking for other places I can pop in that shadow, right in here. You can put little hints, just kind of pull that out a bit so it doesn't look like just a little line. Coming back down where it's darker here. I don't want to cover all of that orange. It's just nice to have little bits of glow in there. And I think I'm going to go ahead and finish out this little area here of the duck. So we've got some cooler blues underneath. And I'm looking at the contour of the duck as well to try to help create that 3D effect. So he's not just flat. And going back into some of that warmer white, but not our brightest. Some of those mid-tones. Kind of letting those colors pull together a little bit. I'm going to put in a little separation here. Kind of helps to round this area out just a little bit, and it helps to separate that dark from the really light. Just kind of pulling some of that blue down. Letting those colors kind of pull together a little bit now. Kind of helps to break those edges up slightly. So I need to look at the shape of this. This needs to come up further, this darker area. That helps. Okay, now I'm going to put in some of that really pretty blue. Going with a light color but cool. Right along the edges here. Such a pretty glow, this blue. And then while I've got that on the brush, it's kind of nice to just bring a little of that into the water and mimic a little bit of what's going on in the duck. Again, that helps to unify. Okay, and then we're gonna come back up here and work on some of this background. So we're going with some lighter reflective lights, little highlights. So we've got kind of some orangey greens going on again. A little bit of a golden tone. And I'm just gonna start laying in a little bit of this color, kind of in between those darks. Leaving room to come in with some different temperatures again, different colors. I don't necessarily want to put as much texture back in there as what we see in the picture. And then obviously I left out the little tail of this guy. It's not really necessary to the painting. Looking at the shapes of those ripples. And they turn a little green down here. Add a little more green tone in here. Okay, and we've got bits of that same color. I want to go ahead and unify both sides. So we've got a little bit of symmetry and balance. So this is more of some of the highlights that you'll see. So let's do this. These are going more. And as I work, I'm picking up some of those undertones, so it's helping to darken those colors that I need. That way I didn't have to keep coming in and darkening every time. Carrying some of these darks out into the top. Just breaking that up a little bit. Kind of make things up as we go up here. Probably make this a little bit more solid in here just to have places to rest in the painting. You don't want everything to be really busy. So again, I know not everybody was able to join me in the beginning, but I was saying earlier how thankful I am for those of you that have been sharing these videos. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate that. I love getting the word out for those people who are interested in watching, and then it's a huge help to me as well. So if you want to just hit that share button, I wouldn't be upset. All right, let's see here. I'm gonna put in a few little highlights up top. I'm gonna yellow that up just a bit. Got a little bit more of a golden tone to it, although there are some cool tones in here. Okay, I do a little bit in certain areas and I come back and work other areas. It just helps me to kind of balance things out and kind of know how to adjust my values as I go. So that way I don't spend a whole lot of time on one little area and then just come to find out the values are all wrong because it doesn't match the rest of the painting. So that's just a helpful thing for me that I do. So I'm coming down into the water again with the reflection of the duck, coming in with some cooler shadows. That was way too light. Kind of dirtying it up a little bit. And again, where the little foot is, we're just going to kind of swoop a little color over that. Push his feet back underneath the water. Kind of letting some of that orange move too. Creating some reflection. I'm going to put in a nice pop of this cad red light. Do a little in here too. Coming back in to put in more blue shadows. Darken that little bit there. It picked up some of that white that was already on there, so I didn't really want that. Kind of dirty this blue up a little bit. Let that start blending in. So I'm getting to where I've almost got all of my colors kind of filled in. So I'm just looking for other places where I can drop some of those colors, and then I'll start working on blending just a little bit more. Make sure I get my highlights. And we can change those highlights up a bit. They don't all have to be blue back in here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put in some pink highlights. Let's see, go a little lighter with that. Just adds a little sparkle. Okay, now I've got this pink color, so where else can I place it? Can put a little in the beak here. Just add some fun color. Kind of just tying those things together, all the little loose ends. Mixing up another kind of orangey green highlight. Got about 5 minutes. All right, so where do I want to work here? We can get the most impact. Kind of pull these little areas together. Getting in some of these darker shadows. Not wanting to cover up all the colors underneath, but just starting to kind of tie things together a little bit so it doesn't look so pieced together. So there's still a lot more work to be done, especially on the water, but I'm just gonna come in and start pulling some of these edges together. So this is what I do at the very end. Just kind of start dry brushing little edges that don't make sense without overworking. So I save most of the blending until now, because if I were to go in, like I said earlier, and just start blending, 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 then it's easy to overdo it. Just popping in those highlights, getting some backlighting in here. And we can pull some of these little feathers out. Just create a softness. And I think I need to put a little highlight on the beak here. Need to go a little lighter, really pop up. Just right in here. And then I'm looking for places where I can add the same intensity. I don't necessarily want that color, but we need to really pop in some bright highlights. Right in here, we've got some highlights. And even though you can't really see it so much on his face, I do want to put a little bit lighter highlight up in here, just to kind of bring the attention up and to balance out the painting. Just finding little details. I'm going to take my little brush and support my hand on my other arm, and then come back and kind of redefine his eye a little bit. I lost it. So I'm just using a tiny little liner brush. Jessica says, this is beautiful. I love the flickering highlights. What is the transparent layer colors for the water? Well, let's see if I can remember. I really just started off with kind of a dirty green. So dirty greens and blues that were fairly dark, and then built on top of that. Okay, I'm just going to define his head a little bit, kind of got lost. Pulling some of those edges together. Gonna get a little more backlighting on this side of his chest here. I'm going lighter, going warmer. And then just taking the edge that touches the blue and kind of pulling those colors together. Again, just tying some of this together so it doesn't look quite so choppy. Need to define his little feathers back here a little bit better. Make those really look like they're sticking up. All right, guys, well, that is about all we have time for. If you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to share it and subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on social media.